Greetings, everyone. Antoine Thompson, Executive Director for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We are so excited about our 73rd annual convention. We know that some of you are just leaving the membership meeting. Some have been doing other things as you wait for the last session of today, but we are going to have a powerhouse session to talk about the role of the media and its importance of Black home ownership. We want everyone to use the hashtag NAREB 73. I'm going to go back and tweet this in a second and post it on my social media pages, NAREB 73, and make sure we get you all engaged and promote this great work that all of us are engaged in today. Our 31st president is Mr. Donnell Williams. He will be in during in a few minutes, but we want to get this thing, this event started. He's finishing up another session, and he should be here shortly. But so without further ado, on behalf of him, and he'll come back sometime during the program, we want to just thank Mr. Roland Martin, who is a very accomplished individual. He's been on everything from CNN to TV1 to now his Roland Martin Unfiltered is just incredible. You know, we've watched him change the game on social media, and he does a lot of public speaking. He's written several books. He's also has his a ministerial license as well, and that's part of that passion he brings to it. And you know what I love about him the most? Guess what? Alvina, you could appreciate this. He's a man of the ebony, black, and old gold. And I just love that about him. He shames me every time I see him on TV with his letters on, and NPHC and all the Black Greeks doing so well. And my lady said, I know you've been in the frat 31 years, but Roland wear his letters all the time. But I got it on my license plate. So
right here, every day.
1906 on my license plate, so at least on one of my cars. So I want to thank you, and he's going to take over now and run the show. Thank you for being here. He's always any platform he's on, he invites the association on to talk about Black home ownership. When President Obama was in office, he was holding him accountable about what he was or was not doing for Black home ownership. And we need you to do the same thing, brother. Don't stop keeping the truth. And we love you. We appreciate you. And 06, as we say.
Well, you can guarantee I will not be stopping because Joe Biden in there. Well, I told people that's the reason I didn't get an interview with Obama for his book. I was pressing him too hard on that stuff. But the bottom line is when you advocate for Black folks, that's who you focus on and speak up for. So I'm certainly glad to be here. Appreciate it. This is a critical topic, and certainly media plays a huge role in how we even lay out and define, discuss, and even focus on housing. Our panelists today, folks, are Hazel Trice-Etney. She's the editor-in-chief of Trice-Etney Newswire, a longtime member of the Black Press. We have Alvina Alston, TV executive, founder of More Media International. Also, Jim Winston, he is the president and CEO, National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters. My man, Byron Pitts, anchor and chief national correspondent at ABC News, and Sheila Brown, managing and principal owner of Vision Multimedia Group, LLC. I'm gonna throw this out here just to go ahead and get this thing started. And folks can chime in. We don't do the sprinkler head conversation where I gotta go to one person, the next person. Now I just put it together just here. I fundamentally believe mainstream media has no clue, no idea what the hell is going on with housing in this country. Mm-hmm. Who agrees?
We agree.
I agree. And let me tell you why. Yesterday when we were on just a conversation just to talk about what was going to happen today, I went to my newswire and I actually counted. I put a find on the number of times that I mentioned Black home ownership over the last several years, and I came up with like 49 times now. I can't say there were 49 different stories, but that's just how much Black anything means to me, unapologetically Black. That's one of the mantras of my newswire. I could not say that for the mainstream media. This is what we're for. We are here to plead our own cause. For too long, have others spoken for us. And so we've come to not even expect it from other media, because we must move forward and we must get, as I said yesterday, in the ring and fight alongside those who are fighting for us.
Byron, I think one of the problems when we talk about this idea of even any focus on housing is that it's sort of treated as, okay, when the housing starts come out, when the report comes out, then we'll mention it, not realizing that housing is linked to everything in this country. When you talk about family development, when you talk about whether it's single family housing, multifamily housing, when you talk about those who are renting, those who are owning, it goes to property taxes, it goes to schools, it goes to everything. And frankly, from a media standpoint, I think there's so much emphasis on process, meaning party, this party, that party, who said what, whatever, as opposed to this sort of deeply embedded issue on how this affects people in their everyday life. You on mute, Byron? You on mute?
I think you're absolutely right. Roland, you and I have discussed this and other issues for years, as long as we've been friends. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think oftentimes the mainstream media does sort of get stuck in process, right? And we don't necessarily take on issues well. I mean, I'd make the argument that the mainstream news media doesn't cover housing well for anybody, any particular community. I mean, so often the mainstream news media, we spend a lot of our time talking about process or talking about pathology. And I think in this time that we live in, just like every major corporation in our country is re-examining how it treats the world, I think the mainstream news media is doing the same thing. That's why I think this conversation about housing is so important, because as Roland said, it is a direct link to so much, to how Americans live their lives in our country, and what owning a home says about an individual, says about a family. And so I think this reckoning that's going on in mainstream news media, that this is a good time to have this conversation. And I'd make the argument you have an audience that may not have been receptive in the past, but that is open now.
Jim is also understanding the issues. Perfect example. Look, the reason I go so hard in this area, because this was part of my portfolio when I was a county government reporter at the Austin American-Statesman. And it also was the area that I covered when I was a city hall reporter at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. So when Trump came out and he was talking about, how I got rid of the waivers in the suburbs, okay? That immediately brought up dispersed housing. That immediately brought up census tracts in terms of, and also different housing plans. And I remember debating folks on my show who were telling me I was wrong. And I said, I'm sorry, I actually was on the ground actually covering that. And I said, have you even seen dispersed housing? Do you even know what it looks like? And I think the problem in this country, the moment, like, first of all, even if you say public housing, oh my Lord, folks automatically go to all of the perceptions and everything like that. Right. And it's just a lack of understanding of how it's all linked together. And again, if media is not out there of explaining in a proper way, Jim, people are simply going to just walk around having utterly no clue how this all works and fits in this country.
Yeah, that's true.
And so how do you, from a radio standpoint, how do we utilize the airwaves to change the narrative, but also to educate our listeners so they can also understand how critical just the simple idea of owning a home, how that can change the trajectory of a family's income present day, but also for the next 20, 30 years.
You know, what we find in radio, of course, is that our communities respond strongly to the local air personalities that relate to them in their communities. And so part of it has to be getting these issues on the list of issues that people are talking about. You know, it's easy to say that, you know, we need to address this, but we've got to get people on the air who are bringing in experts who know what they're talking about and can explain to people the connection between owning a home and being in control of your own community. Because those two things, you know, it's all connected. You know, we've learned that the whole wealth gap is based upon home ownership, that white Americans have 10 times the net worth of households because they own homes, and we, you know, that it starts there. And so people on the air who are knowledgeable about these subjects and say, hey, this is what you do. Getting, you know, I'm delighted to be on this panel because, you know, NAREB's got all the experts. Antoine's got all the experts, and we just need to connect them with the air personalities to get this story out.
Well, Sheila, the problem though, what Jim just outlined is that when you talk about radio, and then when you talk about even Black radio, the question is, where are the outlets to be able to have that conversation? First of all, so many different radio outlets have X news departments. And so then you say, okay, how much airtime is even allocated to have sort of these conversations? If you look at it right now, perfect example, just on the cable and broadcast side, if you say BT Her, TV One, Clio TV, Aspire, OWN, Revolt, you have Afro, and there's one that I'm missing. And then of course, if I leave out Black News Channel, they just started, okay, 24-hour cable news network. But if I look at those 9 or 10 Black-owned those Black-owned or Black targeted networks, out of those 10 networks, they do a collective 1,512 hours of content every single week. 1 hour out of the 1,512 is dedicated to news and information, and that's on Revolt, and they just started that show in July. So part of the problem here is that where do you have the conversation to discuss this if everything, frankly, is entertainment?
And you know, it's interesting that you should say that, because just last month, one of the NABOB companies run by a man named Dwan McCoy, his company is starting up called the Multicultural News Network. And the objective there is to have 24-hour news strictly devoted to multicultural audiences.
Right.
Black, Hispanic, Asian, LGBTQ, everybody that's underrepresented now in mainstream media. MNN is designed to fill that void. You're absolutely right. There's a huge void there now, and I'm excited about the prospects for MNN to come in and fill that.
So Sheila, pipe in here again on our Black platforms. It's non-existent. It's virtually non-existent, and that's part of the problem, because you got to be able to reach folks, to talk to them, to educate them, to explain to them the value of this, and then how they can even learn the whole process.
No, you're absolutely right, Roland. And with WUFO, with us being the legacy station, that's one of the things that we do through talk shows. We bring in the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, and have different banks sponsor different shows. We just had one of our shows that was on the air with us probably over a year ago, and it was MMB Real Estate. And it was 3 women, and they were educating our community on how to become a homeowner versus renting. And yesterday, they just had a milestone in the city of Buffalo where they had the youngest homeowner. She was 21 years old, educated, graduated from college. So we all know once they purchase a home, then they're going to be purchasing cars. They're going to be protecting their credit. Once one person see one do it at that age, they're going to follow suit. So it's about educating. And if we're all sharing the same message across the country, they're going to start getting in line.
Alvina?
I definitely can agree to what she's saying. Hats off. Buffalo is my hometown. I mean, here's where it starts when we had our meeting yesterday about this conversation. The conversation is, if the management of that particular station or the powers that be don't want to cover these issues, it's up to us as journalists to cover stories that matter and impact our community. The bottom line is that we have the power, We are on the front lines as reporters and as producers to cover those stories that matter to us and make a difference. Take, for instance, I was doing some research that astounded me that in 2004, home ownership hit a pinnacle among nearly half of all people of color, Black people specifically, according to the census. Now, this was only 1/3 less than the rates for whites. But check this out. Now, in 2020, what we have here is, despite the strengthening gains that I've seen and we've learned about in 2004, right now there is record low housing rates among people of color. Even Asians and Latinos are getting, have more steadier gains than us people of color. We have the problems now. How do we address the solution? The solution is we need to, as journalists, cover those topics that impact home buying, credit worthiness, the economy, and we cannot be afraid to do it. And so, Roland, I salute you, because these are issues that you are not afraid to cover and that you have consistently covered over the decade or so or more that I've watched you and followed you. And I think that's important, because you're not afraid to talk about the facts and the numbers, and that makes all the difference. For me, really quickly, I was the first home buyer in my family. And what happened was I wasn't educated. Not only was I able to break that generational curse, but it was a generational habit. It was fear. No one did it in my family, so I felt like I couldn't do it until I went out and just, did some homework, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So we as journalists have to not only cover these stories, but we have to also educate the audience to let them know that they can do it. So thank God there was someone that looked like me, Mary Downs, who was listening, that she believed in me, where I became a homeowner at the #1 bank, because she was able to walk me through the process and to avoid some of those pitfalls. So as journalists, we should cover these topics and also provide a source of education for prospective homebuyers and resources where they can go for the stats. So salute you, Roland. I learned a lot from you in my process because of issues that you chose to cover.
I certainly appreciate that. Byron, how do we in the mainstream world, how do you break through? How do you get through to the assignment editor, to the executive producer, to get them to understand how these things are linked, and how they should be a part of the everyday reporting? Now, granted, the real estate that you're operating with ABC, you've got Nightline, you've got the nightly news broadcast, you've got ABC This Week on Sunday. But now, of course, with the expansion of digital and the 24-hour platform, which is exploding, the show Lindsay hosts and others, that's also changing it. And so it's creating, frankly, more real estate to be able to sort of expand some of these topics.
Exactly right. Because, Roland, as you know, content is king. And because there are a growing number of outlets, there's a desperate need for content. I'd make the argument that it is far easier today than it would have been 5 years ago for these kinds of stories to appear in the mainstream media. As you mentioned, with ABC Live, which is ABC News's new digital platform that's on the air 24 hours a day, they are desperate to find stories to tell. So I think, so the good news is now there are a growing number of outlets that are in desperate need of content. Also, I think it is about relationship building. I mean, I think, again, like I've known Roland. Roland and I have been friends for at least 30 years. And I think about the things that we've been able to accomplish together, separately, because of the power of relationship. So yep. I think like this organization, a powerful organization, it has membership, it has a following. There's no reason why you can't reach out to local news organizations, to mainstream news organizations and say, here are stories that are valid that you can cover. We will help you find the characters. We have the research. You just show up. And I think that matters. And also, I think about, again, the work that Roland does with the National Association of Black Journalists, which he and I are proud lifetime members of. Part of what that organization does is certainly they go out and they seek to recruit from mainstream news organizations, they advocate, they present them with candidates, but also they hold them accountable when they don't meet the expectations. So I think organizations like this can do two jobs. One, they can go to the mainstream news media in your respective market, nationally, because all these are organizations. Like, for instance, you could go to any BJ right now and get the names and numbers and email addresses of every executive in mainstream television in local TV markets. And then you could reach out to them and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you, have coffee with you, have a virtual conversation. Here is a story that is compelling. That, local television, it's all about weather and traffic and violent crime. Well, when you talk about housing impacts two of those three things for sure. And one can make the argument, all of those issues. So here's a story that you can do that we can help us help you, right? And then if that doesn't work, then you go back to them again and say, okay, my membership has these many people, and we're going to stop watching your station if you don't begin to hear us. And so, yeah, I think now is the time, and there is opportunity. And the last thing I'll say is there are people who will partner with you. There are people who share your concerns, who want America, Black America, all of America to do better, to be better, who would welcome the opportunity to tell these kinds of stories.
And to that particular point there, Hazel, I think that absolutely with this organization, is one of the things that we do with NABJ is advocacy. What Byron is talking about in terms of when we go to these local TV stations, these newspapers, digital operations, national networks as well. That's what it's about. And I think as an organization, one of the things that you do is a content analysis. So let's say you have your members, you say, you know what, we're going to watch ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN. We're going to watch them for a month. And we're going to see, one, how often does housing come up? And then we're going to look at Hazel, we're going to look at, okay, what was talked about when housing came up? Was it Black home ownership? And so now when you go to that meeting, you say, hey, we've been looking at y'all for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Y'all ain't mentioned housing one time. What the hell?
Well, once we do that kind of evaluation, investigation, survey, or what have you, what we're going to find is that it's going to come up, but it's going to come up at the moment of crisis. Like right now, when everybody knows that because of COVID-19, because of the expiration of all of the not gentrification, but the expiration of all of the evictions, the evictions were held back and it's about to expire. When it gets to that level, that's when we hear about it on the ABCs, the NBCs, and the CNNs. But what they fail to realize is that it is crisis level for us 24/7. It didn't just get to that for us. I have in front of me a couple of the headlines that were on my newswire over the past 2 years. One is Black home ownership plummets to crisis level. Okay, that's a part of a headline. The other headline that showed up was gentrification, the new Negro removal program. And then we had information, of course, headlines about evictions as well. Like I said, it will show up, but it will only show up at the time that the broadcast media believes it's going to get its ratings, and that the white-owned print media, believes everybody's going to read this story because it's hot now, it's COVID, it's coronavirus, etc. And that is the problem. The problem is that they fail to realize that it's a crisis for us all year long, and that's why the Black press, the Black media, has constantly reported it and thrown it out there. And you know what? We should do that kind of survey and that kind of review of the other media, but I don't know what good it will do because much of it is about how much dollars they are going to rake in for themselves.
No, but I think it's good. And again, anybody can jump in. I think it's important to do that because here's the deal. When I'm armed with the information, again, I look at it from an advocacy standpoint. And Byron can attest because he's been there when we met with ABC. When I'm sitting across the table from the president of ABC News and the vice president of the executives, and then when I say something, or they say something, and I go, no, that's not really it. I already have the information. See, if I don't already have the information, they can tell me whatever, and I can go, okay, I guess we got to go ahead and trust it. But if I've already said, no, we've actually watched y'all the last 2-3 months, and we ain't seen Jack.
Nothing.
So now all of a sudden, now you confronted them with the information, And this is about pure advocacy. And so from NAREB standpoint, look, I know what we do. What I'm saying, as an organization, the advocacy has to be there on the local, state, national level to push folks, to let them, put them on notice by saying, you are ignoring a significant part. And yes, housing ain't sexy. Housing is not sexy until you're homeless. Now, all of a sudden, when you start seeing the homeless stores, and now you're seeing the people being evicted and the foreclosures and things along those lines. And so that to me, I think, is really important. Sheila, if you can speak to that, the advocacy part, again, pushing media to say, you're not doing a good enough damn job on this area.
Yeah. And you know what? All of my on-air personalities.
Sheila Van Byron, go ahead.
Yeah, they know that they have to speak to education. That is a big part of our radio broadcast day, is educating. But I think when we're educating on this topic, we have to make it so plain where people understand. Because I think we're dealing with the audience that maybe their mothers weren't homeowners, their grandmothers weren't. So this is a whole new group of people that we're trying to educate, to show them that they can become homeowners. But I think we got to say it in such a way where they're understanding what we're saying. Like the lottery, they say $1 in a dream. So everybody's going to put that dollar in to try to get that dream of that new lottery. So I think it's the same way. The more that we could show people how to get into their own home, how to invest in themselves, that is a big thing. People don't know that they can invest in themselves. It would be so much cheaper if a person would own their home versus renting. But then people are like, well, if I own my home, I don't want to have to take care of the lawn. If the furnish go, I don't want to have to worry about that. So they got that fear of so many other things that come along with being a homeowner. So we have to continue to share the message. And that's why I always say the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, is so important, because they're mandated from the FCC to spend those dollars to educate the community. And we are the community-driven station. So most of all of our talk shows, they talk about educating, whether it's buying your own home, going to college, getting a degree. So it's not the same pattern that you might have grew up on.
Roland, I just wanted to piggyback off something that you said. What I found as a journalist over 25 years and executive producer at many stations is where our focus goes as media journalists, that's where our power flows at. We have to fight for these stories. In particular, I helped to launch a major business channel on a big network, and they never cover housing. They only cover housing starts. And housing starts, what that means is the overall building, private home building, homes under construction. And the reason why they kept a close tab on that number is because that number impacts the stock market. That affects the bottom line for the money that's going in the pockets of the 1%. That's why our issues are never covered in the Black community, because they think we don't matter. So if you will Google housing starts, you'll see every major network covers that every time those numbers come out, because that has to do with private building and investment. And what happens is a lot of those companies are what? They're public companies where they have stock in. So they don't care about our communities. So what we have to do as journalists is make them cover our communities and not be afraid to say, these are the issues that matter to my community. And I'm proud that I was able to stand up and do that, but it's still a fight in doing that. So like I said, I salute you, Roland. I salute you, Byron, because you guys are on the front line. Hazel Etney, who I call Harriet Tubman, who is constantly on the front line doing that. Who is constantly doing it unapologetically and unmatched. So it's an honor to be on this panel with such trailblazers doing it, and especially for people like me who were born. Many of us were born and raised in the projects. Me, never owned a home, so we didn't know what that meant, and we had no one to take us under the wing and say, "Look, this is how you can do it." And let me tell you something: the networks don't care because they think that we don't care. So we have to show them that we care by making our voices heard.
Byron, go ahead.
Amen to what Elvina just said. I've been a professional journalist for 40 years. And the climate has never, from my perspective, the climate has never been better for this kind of conversation, this kind of engagement. And I don't think, I don't think in this particular context that advocacy has to be adversarial, because I think, for instance, because of the work of leaders at Walt Disney, where I work, and the leadership at NABJ, ABC News, as of today, has its most diverse leadership team ever. The first Black executive to ever produce a primetime TV show in the history of television was a sister named Catherine McKenzie at ABC News. And so now there are people of color in positions of influence in major news organizations who will listen, who understand the shorthand of this conversation, and who will advocate. And I think a lot of it is just connecting people. Like 20 years ago, as Roland can attest, in mainstream news media, there was no one to connect with. Well, now there are people. That MSNBC just named an African-American woman as the president of MSNBC. And her story,
Rashida Jones.
Yeah, and her story is like the story of so many of us on this Zoom. And so this is someone who at her core understands these issues, has power.
Hampton University graduate, and at CBS News, the number 2 at CBS News is Kim Godwin, a Black woman.
Yep.
Right, and Roland and Byron, don't forget Galen Gordon, who I started with at ABC, overnight producing. He is now the head of talent at ABC. And he
yes.
No, trust me, we ain't forgot, because
that's let me tell you something.
We ain't forgot, because understand, Galen was trying to get to the NFL Network. I made a call.
Come on down,
network. I made a call to the NFL Network on his behalf. He later gets the job. And our advocacy paved the way for the ABC job. Oh no!
Come on, Roland. Come on.
Yeah. And so with all that said, there are now opportunities that exist in real time to have impact, to have these kinds of stories on the mainstream news media, and not just as a one-off, but as a continuing issue that needs to be re-explored. You know, at ABC News, we just did this thing called Turning Point, the series that we did that looked at the issue of reparations, which is a conversation that's never been had on network television that we've been having now for like 3 months. And just to the business side of it, those shows have done incredibly well in the ratings. Therefore, we can do them again. Because America is becoming a more diverse place, communities that might have been ignored 20 years ago, executives understand the bottom line is that they're going to remain relevant. Then they have to engage. And in some instances, I don't think they know how to engage. And so this is the wonderful thing about this organization. You can say, hey, come in, let me take your hand and let me help you. Help me help you.
Roland, could I jump in? I wanted to point out something that was said in the chat. Georgia Richardson is saying that we also need positive stories on Black homeownership in order to inspire others. And another story that I recently did was, about this home ownership program that is at HBCUs right now. Home Free USA sponsors that. And those students are buying their own homes straight out of college, and it's a powerful thing. And I know that NAREB has the inspirational program of house, then car, that Donnell is talking about. But at the same time, I am of the opinion, after my 35 years of writing these kinds of stories, that we still have not done enough. I'm always thinking, what more can the Black media do? I learned a word or a saying in my church, actually, from the young people in my church. And y'all probably gonna laugh at me because it's probably old already. This was like 3 years ago, but it was turn up.
Okay,
turn up. We had turn up Sunday. As loud as we are and as much as we run around the church, we still had turn up Sunday. And so that's what I'm thinking about pertaining to Black media and the Black press. As much as we have fought this story that I wrote last year, Black people were still just at 40.6%. At the second quarter of 2019, we were still there when it came to Black home ownership. So, and I think we got a little bit better, but still the race gap is still there. It's the gap. No matter how much better we do, that major gap is still there. And so what I'm thinking is we need to turn up. we need to do more. And what I'm thinking that perhaps we could do, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but I have been to enough NAREB conferences to hear that the federal government is in on some of this stuff that is
That's
us
where
from
we need to go.
Come on.
Now, the Black farmers knew enough to go to the Department of Agriculture and sue them.
Mm.
You know, maybe we need to start thinking about enjoining NAREB or somebody's lawsuit
Amen.
of the federal government to get what is rightfully ours.
Well, before you start, Hazel, before you start talking about lawsuits, just remember, we're about to go through an administration change. And Joe Biden has said he's going to nominate Marcia Fudge to be the head of HUD. And if there's any function that HUD should have, it's educating people about home ownership. So I think we start there by going to our federal government and saying, you spend millions of dollars a year on paid advertising, and you need to be doing that, educating people about home ownership in our communities.
But let me give this particular piece here, and this is also where advocacy organizations. But when Byron talked about how do you partner with others, when we went after CNN had no Black executive producers, vice presidents, senior vice presidents, executive vice presidents, or direct reports. And so when we went after them, they didn't want to meet because I was on the board. I was like, okay, fine. So what I then did was put together a coalition: Congressional Black Caucus, NAACP, Alphas, Deltas, put together a bunch of different groups, and we were dropping letters on them every single day. Now, in a span of 3 months last year, 5 Black executives from EP all the way up to EVP were all promoted. But here's the point I'm making about in terms of how do you align. So Jim, you just mentioned advertising dollars. 2 years ago, the NNPA had Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. She requested the General Accounting Office do a report on federal government advertising spending. The federal government over a 5-year period spent $5 billion on advertising and media. Black media got 51 million out of the 5 billion. That means Black media got 10 million a year out of $1 billion being spent every single year. So the issue is not actually go to HUD. The issue is hit the entire federal apparatus.
That's what I'm saying.
When it comes to advertising. Now, to Hazel's point, when you talk about targeting housing, we keep only looking at HUD. The reason Marcia Fudge and the reason Clyburn wanted her to be head of agriculture is because the USDA actually has the largest government-run bank in the country. They have the largest. First of all, the USDA's budget is the second largest budget in the federal government behind the Pentagon. Okay, they actually do more rural home development than HUD does. So if we're talking about, if you're NAREB and you're talking about how do you petition the federal government when it comes to housing, is HUD and USDA, because that's where the housing dollars are. And so I think if we're talking about driving this whole thing with home ownership, yeah, we have to go beyond thinking about Atlanta, Charlotte, Dallas, Houston, and large cities, and realize the same fundamental problem we're facing with housing in our cities. We're seeing the exact same thing in rural America, and there literally are federal programs that are designed to handle that type of housing. But it's realizing how do you move as a collective in doing so. So I dare say this here, as it relates to this particular topic, which Byron has touched on and Hazel touched on and others as well. What we need you as an organization to take the lead specifically on housing. So at NABJ, we take the lead on media when it comes to housing, who's focused on education, who's focused on this. And now all of a sudden we're sort of following folks that way. And then you're using your influence to be able to sort of drive the narrative.
We got your back.
No, I agree.
Come on, Roland.
We got your back.
Wow.
In some kind of way, we gotta all have the same message. If for a whole year campaign across the country in Black media, everyone's saying, sharing the same message, we're changing the mindset. We're changing people buying habits.
That's absolutely true. But let me say this too, to Jim's point. And I surely appreciate, the fact that we have a new president. Lord help us. Thank you, Lord. and that he's going in and he's made this appointment to HUD, etc. But what we're going to find is what we found. I was in the same boat as Roland. The reason I didn't get the big interview with President Obama, I got the first big interview. That was when he was president-elect. I never did get any more, was because Reverend Joseph Lowry had told me on the night of the big win that you must speak truth to power no matter what color power is. And so what we're going to find at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, etc., is we're going to find that we're going to need to get in there and still speak truth to power, still speak truth to Biden. We already found that out the other day when all the civil rights leaders had to go and meet with him just to say, can we have a few more? I mean, we should never have to do that. And so we're going to find we will have to do that over and over and over again until we get the policies in place that will make the numbers change. We have to watch the numbers and the networks.
You know what I found, just to piggyback off of what you said, Harriet Tubman, what we need to do is what we do as Black people. What do? We mobilize when it's an urgent situation. This election was urgent, so we mobilize. We mobilize when police brutality, right? Eric Garner's family has been my client for over 6 years when it happened, and they are every day is urgent to them. So what do? As people of color, it's urgent. We have to make housing, homeownership among Black people an urgent situation. So we mobilize and we don't stop. Consistency is key. We need to be consistent. So that's what it is. The message, you all are consistent. Mr. Winston, Roland, Byron, Hazel, Edney, Sheila, and Buffalo. Consistency. We need more of us to mobilize as journalists. We are here every day to make it consistent. So what do? Do we all join together in a partnership and make a commitment to each other that we will stay consistent with NAREB? Also, really quickly, I was telling Antoine that we need mentorships where people that look like us, we have mentorships like Roland, you mentor so many people in the media. Why can't we do that with housing? No one looked like me except for Mary Downs, who I did not know, who just had, God sent me to her to help me through the process. We need more people that have bought homes, people of color that can walk others through it, because we're ashamed. We're not going to ask, the banker or the titleee or the various positions that it takes to buy a home. We need more Black people there in those positions, of course. But when we're starting out, we're too ashamed to ask questions. I know I didn't want to ask certain questions. My credit score is a -0.5. Can I still get a home? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we need people like that can take us under their wing and say, okay, this is what you need to do, Alvina. So I had to go through a whole pitfall, that just like I had to do as a journalist, because nobody looked like me on TV. I was just a poor Black girl from the ghetto, but I had to work my way up, So we need that with life skills, home buying, our credit. We need people that we could call, because I'm sure enough gonna get all y'all phone numbers if I have questions about this advocacy, because I'm on fire and it's hard for me to sit in this chair listening to y'all talk, because I want to run around this room because I'm so on fire from Roland and James and Hazel. But we need mentorships. Maybe NAREB could start some, because Antoine Thompson been on the front line. He's been running since I've known him, not just track. He's been trailblazing since I've met him. But we need that. Do you guys agree we can have some type of mentorship for Black home ownership, and we mobilize and make this a urgent issue?
I agree. I mean, not only for Black home ownership.
So let me do this 1 second. So right now it's 5:59.
Okay.
And we're literally almost out of time.
Okay.
And
this is good. We just getting started.
And I know we just getting started, but Roland Martin to get started in literally 60 seconds.
Okay.
So so I will be live for the next 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we done. So let me just summarize for a second. So we talked about the direct advocacy to media companies, whether they are local, whether they are national. That's first. And then in all of them, whether you're magazines, newspapers, television, radio, you have that. Two, we talked about the creation of platforms, even in Black media, to be able to tell these stories and be able to spread the information. Three, and that which is the homework for NAREB, and that is to become the, and I'll put it this way. I had a conversation with U.S. Black Chamber Inc. And I said this to Ron. I said, there cannot be a conversation about Black economics and y'all not at the table. And so let me just say this. Let me just say this here. Let me just say this here as an organization, and y'all got to go hard at some other Black people. Let me just be real clear. You can't talk about housing if you don't have housing folk at the table. So I fundamentally believe, absolutely, that if you talk about a new administration, NAREB is saying, no, we're going to take the lead on the issue of housing and home ownership. So now, so that's that. So we talk about all those different things. So I want to do this here. I want to get, I always believe in leaving people with a challenge, leaving people with one thing to do when we leave here. And so I want to start with you, Jim, and each person 30 seconds, the challenge that you want to give each to anybody here, what to do now. We've had this conversation. We've been talking for the last 46 minutes. We've had some great things to say. What do you want folks to leave here to do now?
For education of our community about home ownership, I think people need to be reaching out to their local media outlets, certainly the Black-owned stations in NABOB. Please feel free to reach out to us. If you're in a city that doesn't have Black-owned media, as Byron was saying, approach your local media outlets, wherever they are, radio, television. As Byron was saying, television, there's a lot of places we're looking for news stories. And I think that the idea has got to be everybody locally where you are, because home ownership is a local issue. And I think people just need to be reaching out to the media outlets wherever they are.
Sheila.
Yeah, I totally echo what Jim say. And, I would say to the younger one, as she was saying, get some mentors. We need to tell them to protect their credit. Credit scores is very important when you're looking to purchase a home, purchase a car, or any big ticket item, and continue to educate people and let them know that dream can come true for them too.
Hazel.
I was very proud recently when I had one of 5 interns from Howard University to come to me and to say to me, I want to write about Black home ownership. I did not prompt her. I did not say anything. So it must be somewhere in the DNA of Tri-City Newswire that she caught it. So we need to continue to try to duplicate ourselves, to try to make more of who we are and what we're saying. So I absolutely agree with Alvina as well.
Byron?
Oh, I'm about to faint.
I agree with what's been said about how we can advocate. Certainly, reach out to NABJ. They can give you the contact information for any major news organization in this country. Look, I'm a reporter looking for all kinds of great stories, and I think this is a great and important story to tell. My number is 917-715-8824. Text a brother. I'm looking for a good story. If I can do it, ABC News has lots of places where they do important stories. And I would imagine if you come with a strong story, we can find a home for it.
Okay, and let's see, hold up. Alvina, go ahead.
I would just say, I find to be accountable. Hold me accountable, and let's hold each other accountable, so that we keep our feet on each other's necks about what we said we're going to do it. That's the most important thing. Let's keep our feet on each other's necks, and let's not stop the conversation here. Let's unite. If we have to talk once a month, it's going to bring change. How about that?
Absolutely. My final comment is this. I'm always looking at folks when they have an audit. So my challenge actually is to NAREB. I'm looking at your Twitter feed. I'm looking at your Instagram feed. My challenge to you is to actually drive more information every single day on those social media platforms and to also get folks to begin to follow you. One of the things that you should do is then if you're posting information, what you should do is you should tag folks like Byron, Hazel, and myself, because what happens is here, when you tag us, it pops in our feed. It's easier for us to hit retweet.
Ooh.
Okay, it's much easier than remembering, oh, we saw this, we saw this. That's what a friend of mine did. She was trying to build up her newsletter, and I said, Renee Seiler, look, she was on CBS this morning, but Renee didn't have a big following several years ago. I said, Renee, just tag me, baby. I said, I'll retweet you. And that I took her Twitter feed. She added several thousand people in doing so. And so take advantage of social media to be able to build the brand awareness. And so then when you put the information out there, we're able to retweet it, able to resend it out. And now we're also informing people. And so social media is one of the greatest tools and the easiest for us to be able to drive the information. Give a big hand around folks to Hazel Trice, Etney, Alvina Alston, Jim Winston, Byron Pitts, and Sheila Brown for this discussion on the role of media in increasing Black home ownership. And as we say, in the words of that great financial counselor, Gangster Frank Lewis, I'm gonna get that money.
Well, I want to thank, we want to thank
Thank you, NAREB.
Mr. Martin for being a great host as always. And we took a lot of notes today. You are right. We got to step up our game. We will definitely do that. We have two of our leaders of our communications team, Ms. Joanne Williams and Jill Harrison, on the line as well. And we want to thank Alvina, Jim, and Hazel.
Turn up.
Also Sheila as well. Did I get everyone? I think I missed somebody. And Byron, of course. And Byron, he gave out his number. I mean, that is incredible. That is incredible. And I want to say thank you, Byron. When I first met you, you said, if you ever need anything, call me. And I called you and you showed up. So we want to thank you for that as well.
Byron gave you his Google phone number. I got his real text.
Hey, you know what? I don't care. Hey, you know what? I got 20 emails, but if you give me one that he respond to, I don't care what number it is.
I'm messing with you. Hey, folks, I got to go to the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Last thing for all of the members on the show, we start again the conference on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. NAREB affiliates call on Tuesday. We also have a training with FICO as well. Make sure you take some of this information. If you have not been on your local radio station or TV station, or your local board has not been in the newspaper, please follow up, make a phone call, go down there, meet with the general manager of the station or the assignment editor and see what you need to do to get some coverage on at least no less than a quarterly basis with your local radio, TV, newspapers, etc. Ms. Jill, I'll turn it over to you. Anything else?
No, I just want to thank everyone for being on the call with us this evening. This has rounded out what has been an amazing day. Please stick with us if you all can. We know you have very busy schedules, but if you can join us for the remainder of the conference and catch some of our sessions, we'd be so grateful. And we need to reconvene and do this again and keep this going and going and going. You guys can be our influencers, the one that can advocate for us and be, you know, our cheerleaders with your audiences. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Happy holidays. God bless everybody.
Everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Y'all on
Bye-bye.
Tuesday. 1 o'clock Eastern time.